Okay, all this while we've been looking at language at many levels, language to give information, language to express feelings, language to give direction, and how the different word definitions actually matters. And how all these aspects of language actually make us a good communicator and hence make us effective critical thinkers. But have you ever thought about how language can actually be used as a weapon of mass destruction? I'm right. So, language used as a form of manipulation? Well, most of us do not really notice, but language can be used in order to tailor our needs on others. This is what advertisements do. This is what some politicians do. This is what people in the media do, the press. So language is, of course, in the first aspect, used to inform, but it could also be used to inform in a very misleading way. So in this lecture, we'll take a look at how language can be used to deceive people, to manipulate people, or how lies can be made to sound very truthful. So there are many devices used in the manipulation of language. The first one, there are actually three that we would want to focus for our lecture. Okay, so of the three devices, the first one being emotive language, second being rhetorical devices, third width and or deliberate deception. So they're deliberately deceiving you. So let's take a look at the first one, emotive language. When we talk about emotive language, throughout the chapter, we have been talking about how language is used as a means of transmission of emotion. So emotive language is actually used to elicit a certain emotional impact. So they want you to make you feel in a specific way. This way could either be a positive way or a very negative way. So when you have a factual issue, emotive language can then slant the truth, deceive the truth, just make it a little bit bent, and obscure our critical thinking abilities. So it can just cloud our thinking abilities at that point. So this is why it's very dangerous. When people have weak arguments, in previous lectures you would have heard about what makes a good argument and what are weak arguments. This is very dangerous when people actually talk about these kind of languages. Why? They can use weak arguments, weak points, unhealthy information for marketing purposes to actually masquerade it, to cover it up as something important. Let's take a look at maybe this a recent issue in Malaysia where we have this person, I wouldn't want to name who, but coming up with his a very active person on social media. Is an activist. He calls himself activist. This person actually released some interesting videos on Nestle product, specifically on Milo. So I'm not sure of the content though, but let's take a look at the advertising of Milo itself. So Milo is always being branded, or marketing strategies have always been in promoting it as a health drink. So that was the issue, health drink. So health drink then would be something with healthy elements, with a nutritional elements. But in this case, a person claims that Milo has a very high sugar content, up to about 40% of sugar content. So this is where people, the public, are being misguided. So just by the term health drink, so when you say health drink or healthy drink, it technically gives you the awareness or creates an image that when you drink it, you'll become healthy. But in Milo's case, it might not be true. Okay, so that's emotive language. Now let's talk about rhetorical devices. So under rhetorical devices, we have 4 different commonly used rhetorical devices. Okay, so rhetorical devices like emotive language, they actually use a sort of psychological persuasion rather than reasons, rather than arguments to persuade people. So you have to understand that these devices are used to manipulate people. They don't have to manipulate people if they have the facts, if they have the points. So in this case, they lack substance. Therefore, they use language to cover up, to advertise, to promote their ideologies. So coming back to the 4 commonly used rhetorical devices, we've got euphemism, we've got dysphemism, we've got sarcasm, we've got hyperbole. Now, let's take a look at one example first before that. Politicians, for example, are very notorious for their use of manipulative language, right? So they can use many of these devices in order to get their needs across. So let's take a look at the first one, yeah? Euphemism. So euphemisms actually replace negative terms with neutral or even positive terms in order to conceal, to cover up, or sugarcoat the truth. So euphemism is very simple. It's very famous in literature, in normal conversations, where, for example, if you see an old man, you instead of calling a group of people, old men, you can try to cover it up a little bit, sprinkle a little bit of good stuff on it to make it sound nicer. How? Rather than calling them a group of old people, you can actually refer to them as senior citizens. So how does that change? They somehow, these 2 phrases, these 2 words, they actually refer to the same group of people, elderly people with age maybe about 50 to 60, 70 and whatnot. But what happens is when you replace old with senior, it some sort of gives them a sense of respect, a sense of acknowledgement, rather than old, which is being a little bit negative. Yeah. So euphemism is basically sugarcoating the truth. So it's just trying to hide the idea that they're old by saying that they're senior, they're experienced with years senior. Okay, let's take a look at the second type. Dysphemism. Dysphemism in contrast to euphemism, because if you notice these 2 terms are very close to each other, they actually use negative terms to produce negative effects. Can you see the difference? Euphemism actually has positive term to replace negative term, whereas dysphemism uses negative in order to produce negative effect. So positive, negative, negative, negative. All right. So why do they use them? They are often used in order to win over a group, maybe, or in order to make other people feel isolated, to champion at certain areas. Some examples, but most of them tend to be a little bit offensive, derogatory. Let's say the use of this word faggot, F-A-G-G-O-T, faggot, to refer to the gay community. So that's very offensive. And the idea of gay itself is already negative in society, and you use something that is of similar effect or even worse in order to describe the same group. Okay, Let's talk about sarcasm. Sarcasm is a third type of device. So sarcasm involves the use of ridicule, insult, even irony. So like other rhetorical devices, it is actually used to deflect your critical thinking analysis and to encourage the feeling of disapproval towards the subject. So it could be anything, as simple as people always tend to misinterpret a joke, a humor, to sarcasm. So a joke is just simply saying something or doing something in order to create a sense of happiness, to make everyone happy. A sarcasm is actually making a cynical comment on someone, and it actually makes you happy, but the other person could feel hurt. Okay, and the last one, hyperbole. Hyperbole is actually one of the literary devices as well. It's a device that's used for exaggeration, trying to make something small look really big, overstating something in order to basically distort facts, change the meaning, okay, make a deviation out of the real original context. So as good critical thinkers, you must be able to recognize and also resist these rhetorical devices. So one good example would be George Orwell's 1984, where this novel actually employs a lot of rhetorical devices, and you should try reading it. Okay, let's take a look at this, yeah, where we have different facial expressions. So if you take a look at picture A and picture B, the first one on your left and the second one on your right, you could see that both of them are actually smiling. No doubt in it. But if you take a closer look at it, you can see that different facial expressions can actually disclose a wealth of information. My question, who do you think is more genuine? The one on the left or the right? Yeah. So if you take a look at the second one on my right, you can see that she is more genuine with her smile lights up. But the other one has got a smirk with the lips slightly slanted. So she might not be as genuine as the other one. Let's talk about deception and also lying. So deception is just making people believing in something that might not be true. So although rhetorical devices may involve a lot of deception, but this deception can always not be deliberate. So people can do it unintentionally. I could deliberately try to skip a few things so that you would not get upset. I would try to hide certain things so that certain repercussions do not happen. But a lie, on the other hand, a lie is you doing it intentionally. It's a deliberate attempt to mislead people without prior consent. So what happens when you lie? Lies can, number one, obviously damage the trust that you have for the other person. So first time, maybe you get away with it, but when you get caught red-handed, the lie will make the other person not trust you anymore. And it could also derail honest communication. So how do we as good critical thinkers detect lies? Isn't that a tough job? Well, as good critical thinker, we must be, number one, try to be able to detect, recognize, and even, mind you, challenge the lie. So when someone says something, you don't simply accept it as the truth from Bible. What you should do is try to think, process the information, and see if there are any loopholes. If you think that these statements, arguments lack something, you can always challenge it. And number two, which is very true, always cross-verify or check the information. You can at any point check the information that a person tells you. If a person informs you verbally about something, you can always, for example, check it online. So when you verify, you know that whether or not this person is lying. And this is the most important part of being a very good critical thinker and detecting a lie. You have to be very careful and aware of the non-verbal cues of lying. That's difficult, I know. But if you are accustomed of the person, or if you see a general pattern of lying, such as less physical movement, blinking, and change in voice tone and pitch, sometimes even errors in storytelling, then you know that this person is lying. So if you notice sometimes when a person recalls of an event, but the person did not actually attend the event, the person would definitely make some errors. For example, if I am talking to a person and that person claims that he could not attend my class because he was on duty at the library, I would definitely ask him a few questions and see how he does. Or better still, I would let him narrate the story first of what time he works, where it was, and then where did he have his lunch and whatnot. And after a few days, I could ask the same questions again. The bet is most probably he would have told me that he had chicken for lunch at 2, and on the second day he would have told me fish for lunch at 3. That could be a way of you detecting the lie. Now, in conclusion, you have to always remember that language is a form of symbolic communication. Remember how we spoke about language itself is a set of arbitrary symbols. So with these symbols, you make meaning out of it. And with this meaning, you could actually get it across to another person. You can communicate to the other person. And when you communicate, you look at their needs and then you also give your needs across. So when the needs are matched, then communication happens. And when communication reaches a point where it makes you employ some thinking skills, like critical thinking skills and whatnot, it makes you an effective critical thinker. So you have to understand that with language, it allows us to organize information, to organize experiences, to organize all these data, various sources of data into a very schematic system in our brain and also in other people's brains. And it could also enable us, language, yeah, could enable us to express our feelings, our thoughts to others. And the last one is to also to critically analyze our experiences. It could be a sort of reflection, a sort of critical study, or even a way to improve our future experiences. So language, in a nutshell, it shapes our understanding of the current reality that we are in, of the people that we communicate with, of the society that we exist in. But most importantly, language also helps us to shape the perception of ourselves, help us build an image in the society. So this is why language is a very important tool in order to become a good critical thinker.